Hi guys, welcome. We shall be joining in.
Okay, so I can good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon. We thank you very much and welcome for this 31st session of the ASO monthly webinar sessions. that we have been holding since 2020. It is a very good opportunity once more to interact and also to discuss about the issues of quality infrastructure that affect trade, not only in Africa, but all over the world. Our topic today is Common Regulatory Framework and Sustainable Development. That is our theme, and the topic is implementing harmonized standards for trade facilitation and sustainable development. As is our new approach, we are co-hosting the ASO webinar since 2023 with our member states, and only also highlighting the issues which our member states are facing so that we have a common understanding about them, and also we have recommendations and resolutions on the way forward. We are blessed in this 31st session to have Uganda as a member state through the UNBS to co-host this webinar. Go to second. We are blessed again today. This is about ARSO. You know about ARSO Intergovernmental Organization, which was formed in 1977. We have 43 member states, and our role is harmonization of standards and conformity assessments. And some of our principal mandates originate from the blueprints from the African decisions. We have the FCFTA TBT Annex Article 6, which highlights the need of harmonized standards and gives us the responsibility once more. The third one. We are blessed today to have our key panelists. You will see the host of this webinar session should have been Mr. Ruben Gisore, the technical director of ARSO. But unfortunately, we are in Kampala, Uganda right now. We are having a session with our TC experts leadership. That is the chairs, the secretaries, and the conveners. We have about 80 experts from all over Africa within the ASO member states going through capacity building sessions to enhance their capacities in standards harmonization, both at the continental and international level. That is why also our moderator of today, who is the executive director of Uganda National Bureau of Standards, Mr. David Livingstone Ibiru, is also not with us here. He's in the building where we are currently, but he's in the session of another session of interaction and also the closing ceremonies for the event that has been taking place since Monday. So that is why they are not here with us, but myself, Mr. Philip Okunga Nyango, the documentation of ASO, documentation and information manager of ARSO at the ASO Central Secretariat, is now acting as the host. So we have the pleasure also to have Ms. Sylvia Karabu, the head of communication and marketing at the UNBS, who is now standing in for Mr. David Ibiru for the moderation purposes. For the panelists, we have Ms. Nadine Umutoni. We were supposed to have Mr. Biansi, but due to an urgent activity which has arisen, you know, these are government officers, Mr. Biansi will join us later if it will be possible for him. We have Mr. Martin Imangalat, who is also joining us today. And then we have Mr. Charles Gashai, who will be taking us through the sessions. We realize the importance because what has made us to approach this webinar session through the themes and the topics is because of the importance, the continued importance of the technical barriers to trade since the signing of the GATT in 1947, where nowadays countries and regions can negotiate on the tariffs, but non-tariff barriers, especially the technical barriers to trade, standards, technical regulation, accreditation, and common conformity assessment and methodology measures have become hindrance to trade. That is why the issue of common regulatory framework, as has already been highlighted in so many TBTs agreements, including the WTO TBT agreement, have become important. And you realize that this needs a lot of cooperation at the national level, at the regional level, at the continental level, and also at the international level. So next. So we continue to have the challenge. We see the scope of standard, which becomes as important in every situation, the national level, the regional level, and at the international level. But at the end of the day, you realize that we really need to harmonize the standards, the conformity assessment system, so that we can easily trade with each other. If you continue, we will see how activities continue. Like in Africa, we have the challenge of the regulatory divergence, the heterogeneity of the regional economic communities, regulatory framework and standards and conformity assessments. These are some of the basic incentives that make us in Africa to look for a common regulatory framework that can really facilitate the trade within the continent, the intra-African trade. And also in the next slides, if you will see, is already facilitating this, just move on, is already facilitating this through its technical harmonization committees, through the blueprints that we have. We have the FCFTA, we have the Abuja Treaty, we have the WTO agreement. All of these are encouraging a common regulatory framework that including the issues of mutual recognition arrangement to facilitate trade. And I think that is what we are expecting to hear from our panelists today. But at the same time, you realize that there are challenges which affect in terms when it comes to implementation of these harmonized systems and regulatory framework. We are going to see how the host country where we are right now, Uganda, is dealing with the harmonized standards, and in fact, how the technical regulations that they are doing are also affected by the issues of the harmonized standards. If you move down, we will see how also in its own programs are handling this, the conformity assessment systems, the harmonization of standards, the ASO dual marking scheme, the ASO EcoMark African certification systems. These are some of the ways that ASO is trying to make a regulatory framework work for Africa with the cooperations with the international partners, the African policymakers like African Union, the UNECA, and the regional economic communities. If you go down, you will see some few cases where ASO has responded to this, the Lagos Plan of Action. We have standards, quality marks, capacity building and awareness creation. If you go to FCFTA, the same, we have the promotion of Made in Africa, the standards harmonization and implementations, and we have the capacity building issues that we are doing, the improvement of quality culture, and the issues of mutual recognition arrangement. The Abuja Treaty, you realize we are facilitating effective quality policy, the standards and conformity assessment, and the MRAs. The issue here is the regional economic communities that are also recognized by our policymakers like the African Union. And we realize also that within the FCFTA, the comparative standards that are supposed to be harmonized by ASO are about 4,547 for a common regulatory framework, because the WTO recognizes and requests or directs the need of basing the technical regulations conformity assessments on harmonized systems or harmonized standards. The issues of NTBs, the issue of GATT 1947 and WTO, all of these come together and make it possible and also develop the environment for us to work towards a common regulatory framework that can facilitate trade and also within Africa and also the rest of the world. If you move a few minutes ago, the other one is just the ARSO projects and members and how members benefit. You can see the issues of the policy made in Africa qualification criteria, the African quality policy. All of these are working towards making a common regulatory framework in Africa. And I think with that now, it is high time now we realize or we hear from the panelists what we are having, the challenges and the issues that we have. And of course, the Uganda National Bureau of Standards at the national level, because quality infrastructure, common regulatory framework starts at the national level. When we have company standards, the company standards become national standards. So at the national level, they are harmonized to become national standards. Then we look towards the regional level, then continental and international level. This is why the role of our National Bureau of Standards at every member state is important, because they are the starting point. If we don't have strong and effective National Bureau of Standards, national metrology institutes, and national accreditation systems, then we cannot talk efficiently about the common regulatory framework at the regional level, at the continental level, and finally at the international level. It's a great opportunity that now I want to have the floor for Ms. Sylvia Kirabo to take over now to introduce the panelists that we have today. I've been standing in for Mr. Ruben Gisore as the host, and this is at ASO Central Secretariat. Then Ms. Sylvia now will take over to stand in for Mr. David Ebiru, as highlighted in the second slide, Mr. Dan.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Philip, for those introductions, and good afternoon, good morning, dear members who are logged on to the webinar. As earlier introduced by Philip, my name is Sylvia Kirabo from Uganda National Bureau of Standards and UNBS. We are delighted to co-host this webinar with ASO. And we are glad to be hosting many participants from African countries here in Kampala the whole of this week. I will be introducing to you our first panelist. If you may roll to her bio, Mrs. Nadine, who is the ASO Monitoring and Evaluation Officer. And as you can all see, she has been at ASO since 2016, which means that she's very knowledgeable and comes on board with numerous experiences about standardization, harmonization, and how conformity assessment projects can be implemented in our countries. Without wasting any more time, allow me to invite Ms. Nadine to speak to us. Ms. Nadine, please.
Yes, good afternoon, good morning, everyone, depending on where you are. Thank you very much, Sylvia, and thank you very much, Philip, for the introduction. Maybe I can share my screen now. Okay. Okay. Sorry. As you have just introduced me, I'm Nadine Mutoni, and today I'm going to talk about the benefits of harmonized standards and the current ASO activities and the AFC-FTA agreement opportunities. And without any further delay, I can just tell you that ASO, as you can see on the map here, is an intergovernmental organization which has been formed, which was formed by the African Union. By then, it was the African Organization, the Organization of African Unity, and together with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. That was in 1997 in Accra. So ASO was given a mandate to harmonize standards, African standards, and also to develop conformity assessment procedures that are important for Africa. Currently, ASO has 43 member states and 42 with Zanzibar as an observer member, which makes the number to be 43. So you can see that the map is still green, but we are yet to receive the 13 member states of African Union who have not joined ASO. And if I may recall, in 2014, the heads of state, the African heads of state, urged all African Union members to become African Organization for Standardization members by 2017. So we are still seeing new members, and the very recent Burundi, Somalia, and Chad. As per the ASO strategic plan, I can just say we after each 5 years, we review our vision and mission to see if they are still in line with what the continent needs in terms of standardization and conformity assessment. Now for this current strategic plan, the ASO has a vision, which is to be an excellent standardization institution that promotes quality culture in support of trade, industrialization, and sustainable development in Africa. And the mission is to facilitate African industrialization and intra-African and global trade by providing standards that are harmonized and conformity assessment procedures to promote sustainable development. We also have values that guide our work, that is integrity, accountability, excellence, inclusivity, and people-centered. So this is a summary of the ASO programs. We have major programs under the technical committees that is on standardization. We have, I've captured 85, but there are now 86 technical committees, which are spread under 15 major sectors. And we have already harmonized some standards, and these are published online in the ASO catalog. We have so far 683 product standards, 149 service standards, 537 test of methods, and 116 codes and glossaries. So, apart from the standardization, we also have a conformity assessment committee, which has 9 schemes so far. If you may recall, the most known scheme is the ECOMAC Africa, which is scheme D. And this committee has also developed some rules for conformity assessment, and the member states are participating in this committee. We have so far a number of 30 member states participating. Apart from this, we also have another program, education, training, and awareness creation, where we have different platforms, such as the e-learning, the PACI e-learning platform, which is a shared platform with the PACI institutions, where a member state can just join the platform, learn for free, and get a certificate. And we also have an African Continental Voluntary Sustainability Standards platform, meaning ASO is already a member of UNFSS. Apart from this, we have different training programs on certification for different scopes, We again have activities on creating awareness for member states. We have a national documentation formation system, which has an African trade web portal that allows member states to get information on trade and technical regulation, even on a standard in all the countries. So all the member states have access to this. They have designated one person who is in charge, or who is a channel to be uploading trade-related information in a country. We have different web meeting platforms, social media platforms to be sharing all the information related to standards. We have the ASO COCO. This is a consumer committee, which is also having some working groups, and they have already identified some consumer standards that need harmonization, and we have started working on it. We also provide policy support. We can mention that we have taken part on the development of the Africa quality policy, and we have now drafted the African Continental Technical Regulation Framework, which is the major part of the Africa quality policy. Once this is put in place, it will assist member states to align and to harmonize their technical regulation. We have developed the Made in Africa guideline, and it is under review by the African Union, so that by February next year, it can be adopted by the African Union head of states. We have developed a fourth industrial revolution standardization strategy, and we always contribute to the technical barriers to trade stock-taking document, as well as SPS stock-taking document. This SPS stock-taking document is being published this year, and we have also contributed to the strategy of the African automotive sector. Now, coming to the benefits of ASO work in general, ASO is in cooperation with all the regional economic communities, and in order to implement the AFCFTA agreement, ASO and the REX have identified the priorities for the continent, where in 2018 we have reviewed the ASHAM, the African Harmonization Standard Harmonization Model, by including 2 more organs, which are now the Standard Management Committee and the Joint Advisory Group, made of the REX representative together with member states, so that priority of the continent can be put and can be focused on when we are harmonized standards. So the only REC that was not with us when we were doing the review of the ASHAM and the prioritization was the censored, but all the censored members are part of these other RECs. That's why we accepted the review as continental based, because all the member states were represented. Now, on the current project of ASO, we have major projects that are running. This includes the on agriculture, mainly on agriculture. On agriculture, we have a bigger project on meat, cereals, and food packaging. We have already published 31 standards, and yet there are others to come, and we are expecting them to be published in June, so that they are added to the list of standards to be adopted by the member states. We have another on agriculture, which is on horticulture, fisheries, and aquaculture and dairy. And this is a big project which involves 10 technical committees, and also we have the SADC involved on the fishery part. So apart from the agriculture, we have the pharmaceutical project, which involves 4 technical committees. And we have 260 standards that have been published, and they are found in the catalog, and more are to come. We have again the automotive project. We have already published 41 standards, and we are again in the course of harmonizing others. And we hope that by June, we will publish other 34. We have a textile project and textile and leather, which involves 3 technical committees on textile, leather, and footwear. We have again another one on environmental, which involves the one technical committee and the conformity assessment and consumer committee. And finally, we have a quality and regulatory infrastructure, which is general, which will look on the QI governance, value chain, specific services, and quality culture. Apart from these active projects, we have others that we are still under discussions, but there are others that started, but we are still mobilizing our partners and funds so that we can start. These are the ones on research management and the financial grant practice. This financial grant practice is a review that we have already published the standards, and it was greatly implemented even outside Africa. We have again the equipment on petroleum, which is under discussion with Saudi Arabia. And we have others on building and construction, and others on cosmetic. So we have our partners, different partners who support us during our project implementation. I have talked about the project, but now here they are the partners. We have PTP, Germany, we have the AFDB, we have Afreximbank, we have IATFC, Badea under the Arab Africa Trade Bridge. We have UNECA, we have UNIDO, and African Academy of Sciences. These are the major the partners who have helped us, who have supported us financially in the project implementation. And now we are affiliated to organizations. You can see we are a funding member of Oceanis, we are observer member of ISO and WTO and Codex, and we are a member of UNFSS, as I said. Now on the role of ARSO in the implementation of AFCFTA. This is just a picture on the roadmap of the AFCFTA. You know that if this is just a recall when the negotiations started in June 2015 in Johannesburg, then they came up with an agreement which was signed in Kigali, March 2018. From there, the effective operation was in May 30th, and when the 22 threshold member state parties were ratified the FCFTA, and the exchanges, the trade exchanges officially started in 2021, and the African Common Market was supposed to start with this year, and the African Economic and Monetary Union 2028. But these last two, you know that to be implemented, there is need to complete all the protocols, and some protocols are still being negotiated for. So meaning that we may have some delays, but we are just in the beginning of 2023, we cannot conclude. So we are still waiting for the conclusion of the negotiations. Now, we have to note that there are things that have happened. We have the AFCFTA Secretariat, which is in Accra. And we have already 54 out of 55 AU member states who signed the agreement. Only Eritrea has not signed, and we have 44 out of 55 5 who have ratified, who have submitted the instrument of ratification to the African Union Commission. Sorry, now this is PACI institutions, which include ARSO. The Article 6 of Annex 6 of the Trade in Goods Protocol of this agreement give a mandate, a greater mandate to ARSO, and also the full annex give a big mandate to PACI institutions to provide trade facilitation instruments to member states, specifically for standardization. In that Article 6, member state shall promote, state parties, not member state, state parties, those are the ones who have ratified the agreement, shall promote the adoption of standards developed by ARSO and AFSEC, clearly mentioned in the agreement, and the state parties shall, where there is no relevant international standards required for trade facilitation, request ARSO and AFSEC to develop the required standards to facilitate trade. So this is why now ARSO is moving around, creating awareness, mobilizing resources so that we can at least provide the standards that are needed for Africa. So there are some benefits for member state parties on the FCFTA part, is that actually the FCFTA is expected to broaden and the economic integration and attract investment, also create more jobs and reduce poverty, especially for youth and women. It was also expected to increase foreign direct investment under this market. Now the advantages of this is now French. I don't know how I forgot a French type here, but the benefits of being an ARSO member. There are so many benefits we cannot even count, but the most important is that a member of ARSO benefits from the participation in the ARSO Technical Committee. So they provide their views. They even share their standards as a basis of African standardization. So you understand that later on, the adoption of that standard will be very easier because the standard was already domestic level. Now the members will also have access to the conformity system. They will be participating in the MRA, the Mutual Recognition Agreement. Currently, we are having a Mutual Recognition Agreement, which was started by 6 countries, and all members are eligible as long as they are committed to implement the standards and to participate effectively. Access to the new market is also another benefit for member states, because once you participate in this, the private sector, SMEs, we have access to trade fairs and other exhibitions so that they can showcase their products. We have also capacity building program in the essay competition for the youth, where the youth are competing at national level, up to the continental level, and be awarded. So all these are benefits. And again, the other benefits is that we will provide the member states with the materials that are facilitating them to implement the standard, such as the outreach materials that are simplifying the technical language of the standards, and other materials such as the certification guidelines and all of the other ones. Again, the member states are also eligible to share their trade information through the different ARSO platform. So these are some of the benefits, and I think there are more. If time allows, we can speak more, but thank you very much, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Nadine, for that very insightful presentation, where you've been able to highlight the benefits of harmonized standards and the current ASO activities, where all of us as member states can tap into the opportunity. Yes, and it was very clear. You spoke well about what ASO is currently doing and what we stand to benefit as member states and also as participating countries in the ASO activities. But just to explain to us a little more, for Africa, what are the main benefits the continent will get from adopting and implementing these harmonized standards, and why ASO or African standards important anyway? Can you throw more light about that? And then two, I would also love you to highlight on what are the major highlights and opportunities that the AfCETA agreement is offering to us, especially to the standardization community. And for members who have just logged in, she is our first presenter in this webinar, and she has been sharing on the benefits of the harmonized standards and what ASO activities are currently ongoing. Yes, over to you again, Naldine.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sylvia. If I come to the first question on the if the ASO standards or African standards are important and why they are important for member states, I think we know that in its work, ASO follows the standardization principles of transparency, openness, and inclusivity of the WTO TPT agreement. Now, these principles are very clear in the African standard harmonization model, which guides the standard harmonization activity. Or ASO member states are called to designate experts to develop or to participate in the development and harmonization of standards and conformity assessment systems for of course, the priority sectors for Africa. So now implementation of standards, it is very key because these standards are referenced in technical regulations. And on the other hand, there is need for also mutual recognition of conformity assessment and test results, of course, to establish this standardization principle. Currently, we say one standard, one test, one certificate accepted everywhere. So once the harmonized standards are adopted by all the member states, these standards will, of course, be mandatory because they will be referenced in technical regulation. You can now imagine if one standard is adopted by all the member states, and it will reduce the cost of testing all over because the test is also accepted by all the member states who have adopted the standard. So there is much of benefit once if the member states are adopting these standards. So the benefits on the side of regulators, the benefits on the side of implementers, the producers, even the consumers. Yeah, thank you. Now the second question on now the opportunities of the AfCFTA. I know that the AfCFTA, once the secretariat has been established, it has now provided us with so many tools and operational instruments that are beneficial for the member states. I can talk about 9 of them because these are public and they are really important for the member states. We have the guided trade initiatives. The guided trade initiative, which was launched in October 2022, this one is a program, if I can call it so, that seeks to facilitate meaningful trading among the interested member state parties. Now, here we are not talking about member states, state parties that have are complying with minimum requirements for trade as per the WTO. So far, we have 8 member states who are participating in this trade guided initiative. Guided trade initiative, sorry. These are Cameroon, Egypt, Ghana, Kenya, Mauritius, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Tunisia. We have been hearing some information that Rwanda has shipped products to Ghana, and Kenya has also delivered a consignment to under the trade. This is now the program which facilitates that trade. There is another one which is e-tariff book. The e-tariff book is part of the digitalization and trade facilitation journey of the FCFTA, and it includes the rules of origin and customs procedures applicable to each product that is traded under FCFTA. We have again the rules of origin manual. The rules of origin manual is also a detailed guideline on the application of the rules used in determining the origin status of goods. So we have the Intra-Africa Trade Fair. The Intra-Africa Trade Fair is a biannual trade and investment show, and it is always convened by the AUC, AFCFTA Secretariat, and the Flexim Bank. So it is a trade fair which really brings together all the investors, all the partners, everyone is in that trade fair. So we have had 2 trade fairs, and we are expecting to have the 3rd one in November. So the information is online. Whoever wants to register can register and showcase and exhibit the products. We have another one, the Pan-African Payment Settlement and Settlement Systems. It's PABS. So this one is was launched by the 12th extraordinary session of the head of state in Niger. That was in July 2019, and it started with the West African Monetary Zone. This is a monetary zone of 6 countries already, and Nigeria and Ghana have already concluded their successful transaction via this payment system. So it is also something that is very good. It helps to save billions of due to foreign exchange if they use other means. Now we have the AFCFTA adjustment facility. It's a facility which responds to the challenges of short-term negative impact of the trade liberalization processes. So this is also another thing that member states should look into. Now there is the FCFTA Business Forum. The first one is being held in the coming month in Cape Town from 15th to 19th. That will bring together actors from agro-processing, automotive, pharmaceutical, transportation, and logistics in digital trade. So it's a good one where people can also figure out how they can attend and meet important people for trade deals. There is also a non-tariff barrier portal. It's another portal for reporting, monitoring, and elimination of trade barriers. So the last one is the African Trade Observatory. It's a platform which serves as a repository of trade information. All member states should go to this and consult, see where they can trade, because this is an important trade information portal. And I think it will also help in monitoring the implementation process and impact of the FCFTA agreement. So these are the tools that I can present for member state to benefit. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Nadine. Just participants, a reminder, you can send your questions through the chat. And this has been our first presentation. We are not doing so well in terms of time. But Nadine, before we get rid of you, there's a question from the participants. You shared earlier on the infrastructure and the online platforms that ASO has put in place. And participants would want to know a little more on, is it accessible to everyone, or there's a particular procedure for someone to get information and post information on those training platforms and the sharing platforms of ASO as presented in your presentation. And also we have a question on the harmonization of standards for the pharmaceuticals and medical devices. Where do we stand right now? How do we benefit as a continent? So a few questions for you to highlight much further.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the background noise. I was in meeting, I'm in a meeting in Kigali, I'm sorry. But on the ASO platforms, we have a platform where everyone can access information on standardization in the continent, regional standardization, country-specific, and also sector-specific information. That one is the trade web portal, which is online. I think maybe then we share the link and everyone can access that. The other platforms, the other platform which is accessible for everyone is the Voluntary Sustainability Standard, which was launched last year with the support of UNECA. It is also accessible by everyone. But the others, like the SharePoint, for the members of technical committees to share the standards, to share the technical documents, and to establish discussions. Those ones are closely, the access is closed to members of the technical committees. But those other ones are really accessible. And there is another question you highlighted on the pharmaceutical, right? Or the pharmaceutical and medical device project. Where do we stand? We benefit the continent. Okay, now this project started during the COVID, where we wanted a short-term response to the COVID, and that was really needed because the member states were telling us, give us standards for sanitizers, give us standards for PPE, give us standards for everything that is needed to mitigate the effect, the short-term effect, even long-term effect of the standard, the COVID. So we have used standards on a fast-track procedure, and we process, and we got many standards, and we have got good feedback by member states that they were really useful. Those ones we have already concluded the short term. Now we are in the long term, where we have already published some standards. Some of them are international standards that are proposed and recommended to member states for adoption to ease the trade, and also others are unique. They are standards for unique products for Africa. We even have standards for African traditional medicine, traditional healers, and other traditional herbs. So we have so many standards that are needed for the continent, and all these are proposed by member states. They are not proposed from us, they are proposed by member states. These are needed. Please develop them as it is highlighted in the AFCFTA. Now there is another question, it was directly to me. Can we have the level of implementation of the ASO standard in the member states? This is a question which was asked to me. So the level of implementation, there is a study we have conducted on a study on implementation of ARIS, African standards. Now it is the first one, the first report, the first draft was submitted. We have reviewed it. Now it is under correction, incorporation of comments by consultants. So by next month, we will publish that study. It's when now we know how many standards have been adopted by member states and as per the scope, which scope is much of interest for Africa and which is less of interest. We will know it by next month. I think these are the questions. There is another one. He asked me that why I did not mention the current ACP quality infrastructure among the project. I mentioned it clearly on slide that was with UNIDO. So I mentioned it that we have a project with UNIDO, and I talked about 3 components of that project. I think if you remember, I mentioned it. I think those are the questions, Chair, if I can submit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Nadine, for that presentation and for the responses to the questions that members had put across to you. For members who have just logged in, we are in the ASO webinar, and we've been listening to Ms. Nadine, who has been taking us through the benefits of harmonized standards. And I want to take this opportunity to introduce our next speaker and panelist, who will be handling the topic on standards as a source of effective technical regulation, the role of national regulatory bodies in facilitating national standardization activities. This is going to be presented to us by Mr. Martin Imalingat, who is the current manager for import inspection at the Uganda National Bureau of Standards. Mr. Imalingat has been in this field of standardization since 2001, and he will be sharing with us this afternoon, wealth of experience from the point of view of a standardizer at regional, at national, and I hope we shall all be able to benefit. Allow me to invite you, Martin, to take over and speak to us.
Thank you, Sylvia, and a very good afternoon to everybody. I hope I'm clear. And you'll allow me to share my screen now. Okay, in the interest of time, I'll try to make this as brief as possible. My names have already been introduced. I've been at the Bureau now for almost 20 years. And also at the ESC, member of the Quality Assurance Technical Subcommittee since 2005. And I'm currently the chair of that committee since 2019. I know that we have run short of time, so I'm not going to go through some of the slides. I'll focus straight away on the slides that I think are very important, just 3 of them. First of all, the way I've approached my presentation is not to really go into the aspects of the use of standards technical regulations that you already know about and why you think it's important and whatever it is, but I'm going to take you to a very practical experience that we had recently when we're trying to tackle the issue of improving intra-ESC trade in the prepackaged foods and also the cosmetic products. This work led us to formulate a framework that we were able to implement to be able to minimize technical barriers to trade that were affecting these 2 products. So I have prepared 3 slides here of what I thought were the key points in what we did. They will help you to appreciate why the use of standards for formulating technical regulations is very important, and also why the collaboration, the cooperation between the technical, the regulatory agencies and the national standards institutions is very, very important. The slide that you see on the screen is a small introduction about conformity assessment. It's talking about what you already know, real definition of conformity assessment. But I wanted to highlight the three important aspects in that area, that the requirements are normally specified either in standards, in technical regulations, or in contracts that are given to two parties or number of parties as far as the exchange of goods is concerned. Then we have, of course, the activities that we do as a regulatory institutions, conformity assessment bodies, to be able to determine whether actually these requirements are being met. And that include product certification or certification in general, inspection, testing, validation and verification, and the calibration processes. And the outcome of that is really in form of statements of compliance or inspection reports or certificates, which provide attestation that actually requirements are being met or they are consistently being met. Why am I bringing that slide there? Is because when we went into the detail of trying to establish how we could be able to deal with the issue of technical barriers to trade, especially that were affecting these two commodities that were of interest as far as the EAC was concerned. On the current style that you see on your screen, on my left, you see what we found out when we tried to dig deep into what was happening in the various partner states that constitute the EAC. The map of the EAC is there in the middle for you to see the countries that constitute currently the East African community. The source of all the problems that when we looked into the information and the data and understanding the problem that was causing challenges in trade, cross-border trade or intra-EAC trade in these two commodities was really the issue of multiple regulatory agencies. Of course, in the EAC, the arrangement that we have currently is the arrangement of integrated standardization, whereby the national standards bodies also undertake part of the regulatory function, in addition to all other regulators who play part in that particular sector. So for the food and the cosmetic sector, we found that there were so many regulatory agencies, on average about 6 regulators almost in each country. And that created a lot of challenges in terms of complying with the requirements of the various regulators, either in the country that was importing or in the country that was exporting. And out of that, of course, a multiplicity of issues arises. One of them is the duplication of conformity assessment activities or regulatory control activities, because the same industry may be required to undertake multiple compliance requirements from the various regulatory institutions, either in the country receiving the goods or in the country actually sending the goods to another partner state. The other issue that was very apparent was the poor or lack of coordination. And this was actually one of the key issues that was bringing all these problems, because these regulatory institutions are established by acts of parliaments, they have their mandates, they have their scope of operations, and then of course, given the fact that the general economic outlook in the global is such that many of the institutions do no longer receive adequate funding from the central government. So many institutions are grappling with the issue of raising revenue for their operations. And this creates a lot of sometimes lack of coordination among the institutions because everybody wants to appear to be doing a different thing, despite the fact that, you know, you may have actually these institutions doing undertaking similar conformity assessment activities. Either somebody is doing inspection, somebody is doing testing, somebody is doing certification, somebody is doing verification, somebody is doing registration, somebody is doing all the kind of activities that are undertaken within the regulatory control activities. The other issue was the uncoordinated implementation of standards. We found that even in cases where there are harmonized standards, some regulatory institutions deliberately do not use the standards because they want to appear different, or probably because they are not participating fully in the process of harmonization of standards. And therefore, they are usually using different standards, either embedded within their regulations from the time they were created, or they are deliberately using other requirements that are being formulated in their procedures and guidelines for undertaking the activities. But the interesting part is that when you look at these requirements, they are generally similar requirements, probably with a few differences here and there, and a few differences in the implementation arrangements. But of course, even a small difference actually causes a lot of challenges when it comes to trade facilitation. And then, of course, because of their multiples of agencies and all these are to be funded by government, there arises the issue of ineffective control due to limited resources because the government cannot supply to everybody all the resources needed. So you have limited staff in each institution, and because they are not coordinating the activities, then you have challenges in terms of really effective control within the sectors that are being regulated. And then, of course, this brings problems to the business sector in terms of increased cost of doing business. And of course, these are usually issues that we talk about quite a lot in trade facilitation. So this was the picture that we obtained when we dug deep into the issues that were affecting trade in this area. And then on my right are the solutions that we actually looked at that have been embedded within the framework that we developed to try to address the issues that were affecting these two sectors. And as I talk now, we have made a huge progress in terms of achieving results after the implementation of this framework. The framework helped us to put in place what we call the National Coordination Committee that brings together all the regulators in each partner state to sit together and discuss issues pertaining to trade in these two sectors on a quarterly basis. And then we also have established what we call the Regional Coordination Committee, whereby on an annual basis, the representations from the various partner states sit together to discuss these issues. But on an ongoing basis, they are now able to address the issues that impact trade, to share information, to discuss any outstanding issues, to participate in standardization, and ensure that they are harmonizing their procedures. We also establish what we call the common criteria for use in the conformity assessment or during the regulatory control activities by other regulators as far as the control of these sectors is concerned. So the three pillars that you see on this side are the ones we use to address this problem. That is the issue of standardization, and that is ensuring that we use common standards for the activities that we do, either in conformity assessment or in the regulatory control activities that other regulators undertake. And this will be a foundation for the common criteria that we use. Or in cases where we do not have common standards there, then we must at least have generally accepted and follow the criteria established in a transparent manner so that we as regulators in that sector can be able to know exactly how we can be able to regulate that sector based on those generally accepted and followed criteria. The other pillar is the issue of mutual recognition, where we actually, as I said, we establish harmonized criteria for the assessment, which are based actually on the standards harmonized standards within the EAC. And where we do not have harmonized standards within the EAC, we have agreed on the use of international standards, which are generally accepted within the what? Within the various among the various regulatory institutions that are involved in regulating the sectors. And this is an agreement that we have as a region and also within the partner states. And of course, the issues of equivalence and acceptance of the conformity assessment results, that is very important in the mutual recognition area. And then the other thing that we agreed on is the issue of peer assessment, basically to ensure that we can operate in a transparent environment, we can build trust, and then we can be able to build confidence among our sellers. So I thought this would be able to explain in a very simple way why actually it's very important to use standards in the formulation of technical regulations. And then that should form a basis for cooperation among the various regulatory institutions, and also be able to form a basis of where we can now be able to have mutual recognition of even conformity assessment and regular control activities within the various partner states. For example, if somebody is registering a product and somebody has certified it, why don't you take the certification activities and just register this product without necessarily going through process of, again, inspection, process of assessment, process of audits, whatever it is, before you actually register or list such an industry within your register as another regulator who's also regulating that sector. And I think we've been able to achieve this in a much bigger way than we had anticipated. And we think that we are moving in the right direction as far as improving intra-EAC trade in those two commodities are concerned. And of course, the most important aspect too is to ensure that we are looking at the two objectives concurrently. That's the issue of ensuring we have full regulatory control over the sector to achieve, of course, consumer protection, but also we must allow trade to go on. Those are the aspects of trade facilitation, so that our countries become wealthy, because without trade, then we are actually not able to create wealth. And we agreed on those three overarching objectives that we are all looking at as the regulators in the partner states and also within the EAC. That is to enhance cooperation and coordination in ensuring safety and quality of products among conformity assessment and regulatory bodies. That will ensure that we are working together. And this, I think, one of the most difficult challenges that most countries face, to ensure that there's coordination among the national standards bodies or the conformity assessment and the regulators, so that you can then be able to ensure that you serve the sector much better. And then, of course, to promote mutual recognition of all our activities so that we can minimize duplication and be able to recognize each other's actions, and also be able to utilize our resources more effectively. And then, of course, to ensure that, as I said, trade is flowing across our borders, because that's the only way we can be able to create wealth for our countries and for our people. So I thought those 3 slides would be able to make me deliver my point on the presentation I was supposed to make. And I want to thank you so much. I'm done with my presentation, and a good afternoon again to each of you.
Thank you so much, Martin, for those very good summarized presentation. ASO couldn't get anyone much better than you to share your experience, especially that we see you have experience both at national and regional standardization work. So yes, you were able to share a lot with us. Just for you to bring the point a little bit home, I want you to share a little more on how and why you think standards are important in preparing technical regulations. And my other second questions to you, Martin, is to share a little more on the challenges that the African regulatory bodies face in implementing technical regulations. And of course, in your presentation, you emphasize the issue of cooperation, and you've shared your experience on how this cooperation has really worked out for the ESC region. And it will be interesting for you to highlight any other challenge that you think is faced by the African regulatory bodies. Over to you once again, Martin, and I will be giving you more questions as shared by our participants in the chat. And as I had shared at the start, that if you have a pressing question, we shall be able to give you an opportunity to ask a question. I've been seeing Ahmed's hand up for a long time. So let's have Martin respond to those two questions and a few that is in our chat, and I see if time will allow me to give you an opportunity, Ahmed, to speak. Over to you, Martin, again.
Thank you, Sylvia. For your first question, any good technical regulation must have 3 components. And one of those components is to have a clear framework for conformity assessment. And for that to be done in a meaningful way, you must have clearly defined criteria, either by referring to standards or specifying the required criteria that a business person or a manufacturer, producer, whoever is dealing that product is supposed to comply with. And of course, as we are not trading in isolated way, we always trade with many people. So the use of harmonized standards becomes extremely very important, so that then we have uniform criteria that can be used to assess our products that are going out, and we are sure that they are meeting requirements of the export market, but also to assess those products that are coming to us to make sure that, they are meeting the basic minimum requirements. So I think this is the basic concept in technical regulation, which I know my colleagues are familiar with. And that's why I opted to go the practical way to describe what actually we did practically to be able to address a similar issue that was bogging us down in the ESC as far as trading cosmetics and prepackaged food was concerned. I think the other issue, apart from poor coordination that most regulators face, is really the issue of resources, as I said, that, sometimes because of inadequate resources, then there is a tendency to resist the aspects of collaboration and coordination, with the fear that there might be mandate creep or mandate migration that may endanger your resource base, or kind of appear to endanger the clout that you have in terms of the mandate that you have. But also, the other aspect is that we have not deliberately and intentionally involved the regulators in the formulation of standards or in the aspects of collaboration arrangements within the conformity assessment or the TBT area. Most of the time, even if you see the participation in regional meetings, in the participation in all those avenues where these issues are discussed, it's very easy to see a very loud absence of many of the technical regulators, either because they feel left out and they are not directly invited to these meetings, or the coordination institutions that should bring these people together and make sure that they are actively involved do not have do this in an intentional manner, and therefore we find that many of them stand on the sidelines, and even when standards are formulated, they tend not to take them seriously as part of what they should be using in their sectors. At least from my experience interacting with many of the regulators, is what I find as an issue in most of the same partner states that I've dealt with. Thank you. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, Martin, you have actually answered the questions very well. But I think from your case study for ESC, you pointed out particular products, and there's a participant who wants you to share. You spoke about food and then cosmetics as what you try to do under the ESC. He is also wondering, do we have priority sectors under ASO that we would actually be able to implement what the partner states under the ESC have done? Martin, do you have something to share in that line?
I think I will leave that to Philip. I wouldn't be able to comment on that for now.
Okay.
Or anybody from ASO?
So, okay, so as ASO gets in to answer that particular issue, I think we are benchmarking with the ESC on that particular collaboration that you made. Participants also want to know if they will be able to get certificates after the webinar, so the ASO person can as well address that as you respond to the issue of harmonize of priority sectors under ASO.
Olivia, there's a hand
Philip,
raised.
can you? Yes, I saw Ahmed's hand. So can we have ASO respond, and then we shall have Ahmed speak to us briefly. Philip.
Thank you very much. You can hear me. Thank you very much for that question. Currently, our standardization, harmonization activities are mostly based on the African the African Union directives, also on the blueprints and programs that have been initiated by the African Union. But mostly in 2019, we reviewed the standardization activities, priority sectors, and interests as per member state regional economic communities, and a study which was done through the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, that is UNECA, and we identified quite a number of priority sectors that touches on the African countries, and also the FCFTA agreement or the FCFTA initiative. One of the priority sectors, of course, is agriculture, mining. This depends on the resources that we have and our industrialization strategies. We have textile and leather. We have the automotive industry currently, very important. Of course, the pharmaceutical, as we had discussed in this issue. The issue of building and the building and construction. And of course, when we continue, we have the fisheries and agriculture. We have the creative industry. You remember just last year we had quite a debate, and also we did even an essay competition about the creative industry in Africa. You remember we are currently under the third industrial development decade for Africa, which was declared by the UN 2016-2025. So these are all the strategies that have been highlighted, and also the key areas. But they continue evolving, and we work together with the stakeholders. Right now, we are working with the stakeholders in the bamboo, and bamboo is now becoming a critical sector in terms of climate change in mitigations. And we are thinking, and we are working towards harmonization of standards in bamboo to promote the bamboo sector, the benefits that arises as we also preserve our climate. The blue economy, we cannot forget that, arising from the industrialization needs for Africa. So as we continue, currently we have 15 of them that you will also get in the presentation which Nadine has done. But we continue working with the member states and the stakeholders to identify more areas where we can initiate the standards harmonization activities, new technical committees. You remember that from our first 2 webinars in January and February. For January, we have the IT accessibility standards as a need where we need to do harmonization of standards as presented by the Kenya Bureau of Standards. And then in February, our webinar, we highlighted the need for projects and programs and portfolio standards because most of the projects now within Africa and the world over are implemented through projects and programs. And you realize that for Africa, only for Cameroon, about 6 countries participated at the international level. The rest of African countries are not participating. So this is another area where we are becoming strategic in terms of harmonizing standards, in terms of developing standards, regulations, so that we can move together, because otherwise we become a junkyard, as it was highlighted in the webinar, a junkyard of white elephants projects which are started but finally failed. So with standards, when you start a project, already you have a clear mind and already we have a vision about the end. So these are the areas that currently are there based on the blueprints, based on the studies and surveys, but there are so many cases that are emerging, and we work together with stakeholders and our partners. We thank you very much, and we still request you to stay on as we go to the final presentations. Thank you so much. We will give Mr. Ahmed Abdinu also time to ask his question, I think after, but the moderator will decide. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aso. Thank you, Aso, for that response, Philip. I think Ahmed's questions may be specific to what Martin has put across. So let me give him an opportunity to air out his view and question. Ahmed, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Abhishek, for, and I also and Martin for this great presentation. I would like to ask you, Martin, as he mentioned the presentation, there is a lot of cross-cutting issue or maybe a coordination problem within the standards bodies within countries, not even in a level of EAC. Like in Somalia, there is no more standards body who work in here, but there is also like pharmaceutical issue or food and drug agents who they are, maybe it's going to create, and that's maybe also creating an issue of coordination according to the import or maybe export. So how, and we know in Kenya and Uganda also they have the same problem, not beyond the EEC, but inside in the countries like Somalia or others. So that's very specific questions to Martin. What do you think how that uncoordination issues can be done through maybe standards coordination or what? Thank you.
Can I respond, Sylvia?
Yes, please, Martin, go ahead and respond.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. As I said, for the case of Uganda, I think since I don't want to say 2010 or probably even before that, we started the issue of coordinating, especially with our National Drug Authority, the Dialogue Development Authority, together with the various private associations, when it came to issues of development of standards, including the Coffee Development Agency, the Cotton Development Organization, and we tried very much to work together to promote the idea of one state arrangement where you have one standard for the country, and also ensuring that we can be able to work together. With that, we also collaborated very much with the National Drug Authority in the issues of certification in the area of prepackaged foods and also in the area of cosmetics. You're aware that there are cosmetics with medicinal claims, and we worked out an arrangement such that such products can never be certified unless if they are registered with the National Drug Authority to ensure that the active ingredients that they claim provide curative benefits are actually verified for efficacy. And also with the Dairy Development Authority, no company could get certification unless you are registered and licensed by the Dairy Development Authority. And from there, the benefit is that once you get certified, then the Dairy Development Authority does not have to be on your neck all the time, because it has information and data that will be generated by the audit processes within the certification program that is run by Uganda National Bureau of Standards. We have also collaborated in the area of many areas like fortified foods, like public health commodities, like medical devices, with our national drug agencies in terms of control of imported products and what have you. I think what I can say is that we have made quite a huge leap in progress in terms of collaboration and coordination at national level. But the thing is, you have to be willing to collaborate. You have to be willing to go out of your way to ensure that you can engage other institutions and make sure that you are willing to negotiate and willing to ensure that you can be able to work on fairly good terms. The issue is not to try to tamper with anybody's mandate, but forget about your mandates and ensure that you put the interests of the country first. You have common goals. That is, you want to protect consumers. You want to ensure that the goods that come to your country are safe and they are not substandard. So within that arrangement, and you also want to ensure that you export good quality products. So within that arrangement, you can be able to forge a coordination mechanism that ensures that you maintain mandates as institutions, but also are able to work in a collaborative manner to serve the interests of the country. So the thing is to look at the bigger picture, the picture of the country, not the individual institutions. Usually when you look at the institutional interests beyond others, then you are going for collision and a clash. And that's exactly what we did, even when we're looking at the arrangements that I've been talking about at the AESC level. We had to put our mandates away and ensure that we achieve, we work out arrangements that help us to coordinate to achieve the bigger picture of the community, instead of looking at the smaller issues that really impact on the individual organizations. So I hope that I've been able to give some guidance and to speak into your question on how you can actually be able to build collaboration and cooperation back home among the institutions that serve the various sectors where there are multiple regulatory institutions impacted, and also how you can be able to promote the use of standards in technical regulations and ensuring that you have one standard as a country and you remain as a central standard setting institution and ensure that whatever activities are done in standardization benefit the whole country. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Martin, for that explanation and experience sharing with the participants. I can see we still have more hands up, but we are running short of time. We have about 30 minutes to the closure of this webinar. So participants, Allow me to invite our third and last facilitator and panelist, and then we shall have we shall allow in questions towards the closure of the webinar. So for this moment, allow me to introduce to you Mr. Charles Gashahi, who is the ASO SEO COCO coordinator. He will be speaking to us about the role of harmonized conformity assessment systems, the benefits and challenges for ASO. And Mr. Charles has a wealth of experience in standardization and conformity assessments. He has worked at the Kenya Bureau of Standards, at the East African Community, and where he was a chair of the East African Community Standards Committee. He is a quality management systems auditor. So allow me, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Charles to speak to us. Charles, over to you. You're welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Silva, and good afternoon or good evening to us all. And please allow me to share my screen.
Share your screen.
In the interest of time, I will just share a few slides, but just to see whether I can communicate issues on the benefits and challenges of demarking. To start with, just to make sure that we are on the same page, there are some definitions. I might not be able to go through all of them, but first of all, we are talking about marking, and therefore the need to understand what are we marking with. So we are marking with a quality mark, and this is an image or logo on a product or description on a service that will demonstrate that a product or service meets the requirements of a standard. In this case, we are trying to focus on African harmonized standards because we want to promote trade within the African continent and among ourselves. There is also the definition of a notifying body because not all marks are applicable. They have to be notified by a designated body. And these are basically designated by ASO member states to assess the conformity of certain products before they are placed on the shelf. So a member state will have a body within itself, sometimes the national standards body, that will notify the public that this is the mark that will be placed on products that are complying with the existing standards. Conformity assessment, of course, this was well explained by Martin, and it has many components from inspection, certification, testing, but basically to demonstrate that specified requirements are fulfilled. And then because of the mandate of ASO of harmonizing standards and conformity assessment program system, we have an African conformity assessment program that is basically will give confidence that products complying with that are certified under this system comply with the various requirements. Then there is a product certification, because when we are talking about due marking, we are looking at a situation where we will be having more than 2 marks on a product. And here we are talking about permission, provision of assessment, and impartial third-party attestation that fulfillment of specified requirements have been demonstrated. So there are many definitions, but I think I will just dwell on that. And you can, since the presentation will be shared, you can have a look at what is an ASO license, a standard, an African standard, and an ASO mark. I think is important. This is a mark that is awarded to, it's awarded by a license certification body or national standards body who is a member of ASO for marking on products complying with African standards. So we had the definition of a quality mark and now an ASO mark, which is a quality mark. The next slide just goes to show the two marks that we have in ASO. ASO, we have two marks, quality marks, that are awarded to products complying with the African standards. The first one, which actually has not been awarded so far, but both of them have been protected at the World Intellectual Property Organization, the European Intellectual Property Organization, UK Intellectual Property Office, and South African Trade Office. The second one, or the one on my extreme right, is the EcoMark Africa label, which is an environmental label that has been, or that is being awarded to products and services that comply with African sustainability standards. These standards, currently we have 7 standards. We have 4 umbrella standards on sustainability, one on agriculture, another one on fishery, another one on forestry and tourism. Then we have specific standards on tilapia, African catfish, and the cocoa. So when you are doing the certification or auditing and certification, we will normally combine the requirements of the horizontal standard or the umbrella standard with the specific standard. Now, from the word go, I would like to clarify that whereas ASO owns the mark and also owns the certification mark schemes that I'm going to elaborate later on, ASO itself does not undertake auditing and certification, but we will normally license certification bodies, authorized certification bodies, to audit and award the marks on their behalf. So on EcoMark, we have 11 companies that have been awarded with EcoMark that are spread within Kenya, Zimbabwe, Ghana, Nigeria, and Uganda and Rwanda. But we are looking forward to a situation where we are going to have many more companies certified, and also expanding the scope to more than 11 the 7 standards that are enumerated earlier on. So in this regard, I want to say that we are looking forward at a certain project where we are going to evaluate members on their preparedness to audit and certify and award the EcoMark Africa and other marks based on their criteria that will be set based on what facilities they do have and the skills and expertise of the staff within their organizations. So when we are talking of a dual marking, we are talking of combining a mark with another mark, which means 2 marks or on the same product. So I'm just going to give you an example of some of the marks that are operational within member states. The first one is the S mark, the standardization mark. This is for Kenya, and it is appended or given to products complying with the Kenya standards. And so every product complying with the Kenya standard will have this mark for it to have market access within the Republic of Kenya. The other one is the Manka. This is the mark of Nigeria. On my extreme right is the one for Zimbabwe. And below there is one for Botswana, and then on Ghana. So all these marks are normally appended to products that comply with the national standards mark of are given to products complying with the national standards of that country for them to have access, market access within that country. So we are looking at a situation now where we will have these marks alongside the ASO marks. And these ones we will be looking at where the national, the member states of ASO, currently at 43, will have adopted these standards as their own standard, and they will be operating a product certification scheme for them to award the African mark. So we are looking at a situation where, for instance, Kenya, as a member of ASO, we have participated in the harmonization of African standards. And once the standards have been approved by the council and published, then Kenya itself adopts those standards as their own and starts implementing them in their system. For instance, if you have an African standard on maize and Kenya had a standard on maize, it will withdraw its standard on maize and now adopt the African standard on maize and starts implementing it and awarding an S mark on that particular standard. So this is where we are saying we can now allow the Kenya Bureau of Standards to award both the S mark and the ASO mark that I showed you earlier on together with it. And similarly for any other member operating a product certification scheme. Now, I earlier on talked about African Conformity Assessment Program. This program has various schemes, a diet that covers various sectors. It has 11 schemes ranging from Scheme A, which is on primary production, which means at farm level. Scheme B at industry level. Scheme C, without talking much, this is a traceability standard that will normally link raw materials and the finished product for you to make a certain claim. Scheme D is where we are awarding the EcoMark Africa label, which is an environmental label. So this is basically a sustainability and eco-labeling scheme based on African sustainability standards. We have other schemes, E, F, all the way up to sustainable mining. And recently, we have included 2 more schemes that will include Made in Africa and ecological organic agriculture. So we are saying, other than Scheme D, where we are having the environmental label, in Scheme A, we have standards, African standards that support that particular, those products at farm level. And you can be able to award both the national standards mark, quality mark, and the ASO mark on that product. So when I talked about adoption of standards, I gave the example of Kenya without specifically showing what they have adopted, but we have a list of all the member states and which standards they have been able to adopt so far. Now, ASO today has about 1,600 standards. Of course, they combine both the international and the standards for unique products for Africa. And most of these standards, once they have been finalized, the member states will adopt them as their national standards. So I've given an example here of Ghana, just to mention a few, that they have been able to adopt some standards on ladies' fashion bags, women open shoes, woven cotton and household fabrics, women cotton senior household, and then we have cotton picking, women closed shoes, shirts and blouses, and then we have also blazers for schools. So it means when they are operating their national, their product certification scheme and awarding the Ghana quality mark that has been notified, as I talked about earlier, notifying the mark, then we can allow them to, alongside that Ghana quality mark, to award the ASO mark alongside this. And this is what we are talking about as a dual marking. So how are you implementing the dual marking? So we have an African guideline on dual marking, and this is the basis for that will guide on the marking of this product with the ASO mark. The dual marking of product, as it's given in the guideline, shall be undertaken by a national standards body who is a member of ASO. So here we are talking of TEDS, UNBS, TBS, GSA of Ghana, SON of Nigeria, and SADS of South Africa, you can name it. And then the marking of a product with an ASO quality mark shall be voluntary. In other words, we are saying this is not a mandatory process, but for you to facilitate trade and access markets within the African continent, it is advisable that you mark your product with the ASO mark. Just to mention that for purposes of facilitating trade within the African continent, ASO has signed an MOU with the AFCFTA that recognizes only African standards as a basis for trade facilitation, which means a product with an African mark can be able to move freely across the continent. The renewal of the mark on the product shall be done alongside the national quality mark. In other words, the same procedures that you apply for the national or standardization mark are the same ones that you apply. Because we are just saying that where you have an adopted standard and you are implementing a product certification mark based on that standard, then you are given permission by ASO to use the African quality mark alongside that. ASO quality mark shall be awarded to product with a national quality mark. It will not be awarded by the national standards body on its own. It has to be alongside the national quality mark. So we are also saying the national standards body shall have adopted the African standard as a national standard, which means the same standard you are using for your product certification scheme is the African standard that has been adopted. The national standards body shall be operating a product certification scheme and awarding national quality mark for those products complying with the standard. And also, the national standards body shall set up its rules, procedures, and management related to a particular set of specified requirements of the adopted standards. In other words, we are saying whatever rules and procedures you have for product certification are the same ones that you use for purposes of applying the ASO mark to be as a dual mark or alongside that mark. The rules, procedures, and management shall provide for selection, determination of characteristics, review, decision on certification. In other words, we are saying the same requirements that you are using for award of the products, the national standards mark, are the same ones that you use so that you can be able to appel or award the ASO quality mark. So what are some of the challenges that we see or we envision? One of it is the slow adoption of African standards by member states. This one we have seen, but we continue to try and encourage members to adopt the African standards because they will have participated in their harmonization. Then also awareness of harmonization standards by companies who are actually the main users of those standards. And then you can see a situation where there will be the cost of dual marking, which might also be a challenge, because basically we are saying if you have already been having a national standards mark, you might need to change the marking infrastructure in terms of other modes and all that, maybe other labels for you to do dual marking. Therefore, this is also a challenge that should be overcome. The benefits, of course, is market access within the member states, promote regional integration. The mark will serve as a common logo for trade and commerce within the continent. promoting regional integration and harmonization within the continent. Of course, this is one of the objectives of standardization, to ensure quality and safety for the citizens or the populace, and therefore will help ensure that goods and services meet certain or required meet certain quality and safety requirements, protecting consumers and protecting their competition among business. And the other thing, it will also support sustainable development by implementing the sustainability standards that I had mentioned earlier. So in the interest of time, I want to stop there and maybe try to address any question that might arise from my presentation. So thank you very much. I will submit.
Thank you so much, Charles, for that presentation. As we move close to the end of the webinar, I don't know if members, you have some questions for Charles. Of course, I'll have some questions for you, Charles, to address, but there is one that came in through the chat where members want to know how the dual marking is going to be implemented vis-a-vis the national brands and the national marks. Maybe you will throw more light on that. But also, we also need to know why conformity assessment systems are very important to trade and market access. And of course, how sincerely this dual marking is going to facilitate trade and what to benefit vis-a-vis what other partner states have been doing. So Charles, if you can throw more lights on those three issues, then we are going to be able to open up for the members who have their hands up, and we'll be giving in more questions in case they are not related to the three that I've raised. Over to you, Charles, again.
Thank you, Silva. I'll try to explain again. I thought I had explained it during the presentation. What we are saying is that for any country to ensure the health and safety of its citizens, it will normally implement a product certification scheme. For instance, Kenya, they will implement, and for products complying with the Kenya standards, they will award a standardization mark. And I believe the same is with Uganda and many other countries who are members of ASO. So we are saying for the implementation of the ASO mark, it will be implemented by the national standards body that has got a product certification scheme based on standards. But this time we are saying it's not the national standards of that country, but adopted African standards. This is where, and I gave the example of maize or corn, if you have an African standard on maize, the national standard, the national standards body will withdraw its national standard and adopt the African standard. And we will be already using that harmonized standard or adopted standard as the basis for the product certification in that country. In that case, you can see very clearly that it is the same standard as the African standard that is being implemented at national level. And therefore, there is no problem with ASO giving the national standards body permission to use the ASO mark alongside the national standardization mark. I don't know whether I'm clear to that extent. So if you have a UNBS mark of quality along a standard, say for even beans, and we have an African standard, which Uganda has adopted, then you can use the UNBS standard alongside the ASO mark, and this is going to be administered by UNBS. And the rules, criteria, and method will be determined by UNBS as it is using them on the product certification scheme on the same standard which has been adopted by the country. Okay. The other issue
All
is
right. You can proceed.
the importance of conformity assessment. This is, you can look at it from once you have harmonized a standard with all the expertise that it has gone through the various process. If you do not implement it, then it becomes just a document and it will not be able to ensure the health and safety of the citizen. For instance, even if you had the same standard on maize, and it has a very good requirement, say for instance, of moist aflatoxin, for instance. If you do not implement, then it means your people will still be eating maize with that particular mycotoxin. And therefore, we are saying conformity assessment, which has various procedures that includes testing, inspection, surveillance, certification. They are very important in terms of implementing that standard. So we will use testing to check whether the standard, the product in the market has complied with the specified levels within the standard. We will use inspection by checking, or market surveillance by checking products in the market again, by sampling in the market and checking them through again testing whether they comply. And then through certification, you can be able to also check, because this is a question of auditing for compliance with certain standards. So conformity assessment is very important in terms of implementing the standard and then ensuring the essential requirements of a standard, ensuring the health, safety, as well as protecting the environment. So the last question, I don't know whether I've answered that also. Sylvia, is it okay? That we are using conformity assessment to basically implement the standards that have been developed with a lot of resources by member states. Is it okay, Sylvia?
Yes, that's okay, Charles, and thank you so much. Our members, as you can see, we are really running out of time. We've had Bruno's hand up for quite some time. Bruno, I'll give you less than a minute to raise your question. Bruno?
Okay, merci beaucoup. Oui, bonsoir, bonsoir à tout le monde. Est-ce que vous m'entendez? Allô?
Yes.
Hello.
Ok,
Yes.
vous m'entendez? Bon, moi, je suis Bruno Mevengue. Ok, merci beaucoup. Je suis Bruno Mevengue, je suis du Cameroun. Je vous remercie déjà de l'opportunité que vous me donnez pour pouvoir m'exprimer par rapport à la facilitation du commerce dans le domaine, en Afrique. Effectivement, c'est une question importante parce que pour que les produits passent d'un pays à l'autre, il faut effectivement s'assurer que ces produits respectent certaines normes. L'harmonisation des normes, vous avez dit, c'est d'une importance capitale, c'est vrai. Il faut que nous ayons des normes harmonisées. Mais il faut que les entreprises maîtrisent effectivement ces normes harmonisées d'un. Et de deux, il faut que les organismes qui doivent évaluer la conformité respectent certaines exigences qui sont dans les programmes de certification. Donc, il faut que nous ayons aussi ces programmes de certification. Ça dit des organismes qui vont évaluer la conformité des produits qui doivent aller d'un pays à l'autre. Et de trois, il faut que les produits même qui sont marqués, c'est tel que peut-être la marque Ecomark Africa ou alors la marque Arso, il faut que ces marques-là puissent être surveillées parce que sinon, n'importe quelle entreprise pourra marquer ses produits et puis qu'on ait quand même à maîtriser la charte graphique de ces marques-là. Voilà à peu près quelques préoccupations que j'ai. Comment est-ce que les entreprises pourront avoir accès non seulement à ces normes harmonisées, mais connaître quels sont les pays qui ont déjà adopté ou alors qui sont dans le cadre qui ont adopté les normes harmonisées. Et parce que c'est par là-bas que peut-être qu'on peut exporter, on peut échanger. Mais aussi, pour être plus précis, je crois que comment est-ce qu'on peut faire pour pouvoir accéder justement aux normes harmonisées, savoir les pays qui maîtrisent ces normes harmonisées pour que nous puissions mettre ces normes harmonisées au service des entreprises. Et aussi, comment maîtriser les programmes de certification, n'est-ce pas, pour que nous puissions savoir que lorsqu'on délivre le certificat de conformité ou alors la marque de conformité, que cette marque de conformité soit reconnue par les autres États membres. Merci, c'est ce que j'avais à dire. Je ne sais pas si je suis suffisamment clair. Allô?
Okay, thank you so much. Your question will be responded to, and thank you so much for that submission. Members, as we move close to the end of our webinar, allow me give an opportunity to our panelists to give us their parting shots in a minute. Nadine, if you're there, Martin, and Charles, maybe I'll start with you, Charles, and then I'll go to Martin and then Nadine. Your parting shots with us in a minute.
Thank you. My parting shot is we encourage each other to use the harmonized standards so that we can be able to promote trade within the African continent. And for the last person who asked the question, I would like to say that the African standards, the African catalog on African standards is freely available on the ASO website. You can be able to click there and see the standards that have been harmonized. And these standards are available at member states because it is member states that you have participated in the harmonization. And those who will not have participated, they have free access to ASO African standards. So the first thing is, first of all, from wherever you are, if you check the African standards and you have an interest in it, then it is for you to follow up with the national standards body that you are coming from. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Charles. I hope Yasin, that addresses your question as well. Martin, are you there?
Yes, Sylvia, just to say thank you for giving me an opportunity to share with you the little experience I've shared with you, and just to encourage that, we need to collaborate more, the national standards institutions with the regulators at the national level, at regional level, so that we can really be able to overcome the challenges, standards-related challenges that affect the trade. And it will also promote the use of harmonized standards across the board so that we can promote their use in the technical regulations that most of the regulators use. So I thank you again and look forward to interacting more with you. Thank you and blessed day to each one of you.
Okay, thank you, Martin and Charles. Nadine, are you there? Your parting remarks? As we get hold of Nadine, maybe members, you've raised issues of these presentations being shared with you. I want to say that ASO is going to send all these presentations to all of us, the participants, on the mails that we used while registering for the webinar. So Nadine, if I do not have you, I'll be handing over the meeting to ASO so that they can guide us on the way forward. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak to you this afternoon, this morning. Over to you, Philip.
Thank you very much. The Uganda National Bureau of Standards, Ms. Sylvia, on behalf of the Executive Director, Mr. David Livingstone, for having taken us through this session. As I mentioned earlier, currently we are working together with our member states, and we must thank the previous member states. In January, Kenya Bureau of Standards and the IT Accessibility Standards, then Cameroon in February, and the project Portfolio Standards. It was a great day also for us to see how the need for common regulatory framework in Africa will facilitate not only inter-African trade, but international trade. You realize the benefits of adopting harmonized standards. The FCFTA is very clear. If not international standards, then African standards. And also through African standards, African standardization process, we collaborate a lot with the international standardization bodies to borrow best international regulatory practices into our systems. Allow me on behalf of the Secretary General, Dr. Hermogen Sengemana, to thank you once more for this very fruitful session that we have had with you on this 31st session of the ASO monthly webinar sessions, but currently being co-hosted by member states, so that we go deeper to get their concerns. We make them regional concerns and international concerns. Our next webinar, we want to highlight the 26th April 2023. We are currently considering hosting with Ghana. We will see and we will confirm under the inter-African trade, the FCFTA agreement. Then we are looking on ways of working together to make the trade faster, seamless, and faster. We have focusing on the priority sector. One of the participants asked about the priority sectors, and in this case, we will highlight through the panelists, which in this case we'll be having also from the regional bodies and African bodies to highlight on this more FCFTA priority sectors. This afternoon, as you can see, we had the opportunity, and I think Kampala was a blessed city for us. We were having our capacity building for the ASO-TC's leadership, that is chairpersons. And we have about chairpersons and secretaries and conveners. We had about 80 participants who convened here. And for the last 3 days, it has been very successful interactions through meetings that have been chaired, not only by the government officials, but also by the management of the Uganda National Bureau of Standards. And we have been having resource persons also from among ourselves, the Uganda National Bureau of Standards. We want to highlight the joint advisory group. You remember, in a regulatory framework, seeking to get a regulatory framework for Africa, we must work together with the regional economic communities. And we have been working with them. And we have ASO-JAG and ASO Standards Management Committee, purely composed of the officials, REX officials that were appointed by the REX Secretariat. We work together, and we are still looking forward to having them again on 30th and 31st for another session through which we will address the need for regulatory framework working together. The EAC has really explained their approaches. That is EAC, what is happening in other regions and how we collapse them together. Then we have the 29th ASO General Assembly. We want to welcome you 3rd to 7th July in Kinshasa, DR Congo. And we want to thank you because if you look, we are working closely with our member states and we are involving them so that they feel the need for working together for Africa, the need for hosting the standards activities, and the need to know that it begins at the national level but does not end there. We have the regional systems, we have the continental systems, and finally we have the international systems. And we are looking to have the international standardization community converging this time at the Kinshasa under the host by the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo and through the management of the OCC. We want to take this opportunity to thank the management of the OCC for accepting to host the 29th General Assembly. We look forward to have a greater interaction and the Made in Africa Expo in June. We look forward to having a greater discussion further during the African Day of Standardization. The forum will be held the whole day where international community will get opportunity as panelists, as resource persons, and for interactions. We look forward for those that great event. If we go down, we will see the final one. We want to thank the Uganda National Bureau of Standards. You see, we said regulatory framework does not start at the regional level. It must start at the national level. When we have strong and effective National Bureau of Standards, national metrology institutes and accreditation bodies, then we are sure that at the regional level, at the continental level, and up to the international level, we will have a common regulatory framework that addresses our needs at the national level and through to the regional and continental level. We want to highlight and we thank the management of Uganda National Bureau of Standards for these outreach activities that they are doing to ensure that we have a regulatory framework within the borders of Uganda, so that the goods that we produce, the trade that we have here is safe for the consumers and is also good for the rest of the products that we get from Uganda are also good for the rest of the world. This afternoon, we finalized and I highlighted why Mr. David did not attend as a moderator. Why Mr. David did not attend. You will realize that he was taking part in the thesis. He was taking part in the thesis capacity building activities, for which he was one of the guests of honors, and we want to thank him very much. This one was an interactive session that was taking place today in Kampala at the Golden Tulip Hotel, where we had almost over 80 technical harmonization committees, chairperson, conveners on the best international practices in the harmonization of standards, because standards are the basis of a good and effective regulatory system. So this is why you didn't see David here, but I'm thankful that he was busy on the continental agenda and the international agenda. We want to thank Uganda National Bureau of Standards so much for this opportunity and so much for making this week an extension of ASO Week and also an extension of the International Community Week together being done here at the Uganda National Bureau of Standards at the city of Kampala and at the Tulip Hotel. With those few remarks, we want to say that we look forward to seeing you. We missed an opportunity to have the version of how government policies affect the standardization activities, affect the need for a regulatory framework. But from the point of view, from what we know, even if you look at the European Union Commission, it is the European Union Commissions that comes with the regulatory framework, policies and directives that run or affect or make them effectively have their regulatory systems well. We must thank the African Union that has been on the forefront of making regulatory systems and regulatory issues one of their agenda issues. We know the formation of ARSO was out of that, and currently the African Union has adopted the African Quality Policy, and we know what a quality policy can do at the regional level, continental, and at the national level. The African Union is soon also considering the African Continental Technical Regulatory Framework, the ACTREF, which is being initiated through PACI. And finally, this one will be adopted by the African Union. We know that the African Union has also is now considering the Made in Africa qualification criteria. So when our government officials, when government bodies become active in the regulatory systems of our societies, then we know we are heading somewhere. We missed that presentation, but we know that most of the African governments are really supporting our national quality infrastructures so that they are effective, so that they feed into the regional, to the continental, and to the national level. We want to thank them for that. With those remarks, I want to take this opportunity to thank our panelists on behalf of the Secretary General. We want to thank all the participants for your patience and also for your attendance. And we look forward to the 26th April for another webinar session, that is the 32nd webinar session. And we look forward also to engaging more on your participation at the 29th ASO General Assembly events in Kinshasa. Thank you very much. And I say, God bless. Thank you.